Some Bantus who subscribe to the Hebrew Israelites' teachings outrightly reject and condemn everything African. They hate Africans even though they too are African, calling us in a pejorative way Hamites. Yet almost all of their founding fathers and leaders embraced Ubuntu, Bantu, or so-called African roots. This is Rabbi J. Ford. This is also Prophet William Sanders Crowdy, who started the Church of God, the Saints of Christ in Lawrence, Kansas in 1896. And this is Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew, who was born in Nigeria and established the Israelite Rabbinic Academy. And many others did not abuse their African roots. This preacher Rabbi Elem Dumizulu of Ma'arifa Dochem, escaping subtle mental chains, a means to escape their African identity. The Hamitic case is our biggest problem. How old is this hate against black people? Instead of healing each other after the Atlantic and during Islamic trade and slave wars, the Chinese conquest and other subtle wars, we continue abusing each other using the same hypotheses and tactics that were used by Christian and Islamic preachers. This is the Hamitic case at work, the driver of the divide, rule, and conquer tactics, now firmly planted in the minds and heads of many of our melanin-dominant brothers and sisters in the United States. It started 700 years before the European discovery of sub-Saharan Africa. The black Jews, also known as black Hebrew Israelites, and their doctrine on and about Africans is a cruel, prejudiced, old dogma known as the Hamitic case. You can see what they're doing here, as well as you can read many other sources. It's a curse and it's a shame that we continue believing that. They think that Ham, the youngest son of Noah, the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites, and they portray themselves like this and reference these teachings basically from the compact dictionary, the Zondervan compact dictionary. Is there any scientific evidence to support what the Hebrew Israelites teach, that they are a separate, unique, dark-skinned race? There is nothing like that. It's a lie. It's a belief. It's based on a doctrine imported and imposed on our melanin-dominant brothers all over the earth. On the other hand, well-founded and founded archaeological research has never been able to locate even one grave or one grave site or one proof of the existence of Hebrews, of the patriarch, artifacts, or proof of the Exodus. Why? Because the so-called Hebrews were, as we have already demonstrated many times, Africans, known in ancient times as Ethiopians, Egyptians, Putites, or Bantus by the Greeks and many others. It is very apparent that Africans in the Americas are culturally African in almost every way. Creole and Ebonic languages are rooted in African speech patterns, so much so that various West Indian Creole languages use African loan words such as rara, yam, and dupi. Guyanese Pan-Africanist Isu Kwayana once explained that his wife Chaiko Kwayana had even come across a village in Guyana where the Africans spoke Yoruba. If they were Hebrew Israelites, why is their language more African than Hebrew? Quickly, Hebrew is Yiddish. It was created by the Khazarian. Heavy indoctrination. They concentrate on Atlantic slave trade and ignore the Islamic one, which is still going on today. You look at this illustration in the slave market of Cairo, which appeared in Egypt and Nubia from the drawings made on the spot by David Roberts, 1846-1849, which demonstrates the long history of slave trade by Arabs and Muslims. The Muslims were the first to make use of large numbers of sub-Saharan black Africans. They developed a long-distance slave trade which began in the 7th century and lasted into the 20th century. It's still going on today in Libya and many other places in so-called Middle East, area created by Europeans for their own descendants who are now known as the Arabs, but white Arabs are Europeans. This chain and this system delivered millions of Africans across the Sahara Desert, Red Sea, and Indian Ocean to North Africa, the Mediterranean and Persian Gulf. Although over a much longer period of time and comprising far more females, the number of Africans exported via these trans-Saharan, sub-Saharan Africa or Indian Ocean slave trades probably equals or outnumbers those that were taken into the Atlantic slave trade. So if the Torah is inspired, Deuteronomy 28 and Leviticus 26, why does it ignore this Islamic slave trade? This has never been dealt with by all those that subscribe to the explanation of Deuteronomy 28. I was there. I used to teach it. I never preached or taught the Islamic slave trade. Bantus who were enslaved and brought to the Americas are heavily indoctrinated today. Thousands of them today automatically dissociate themselves from Africa. It's almost instinctive. They teach publicly the Africa they are conditioned to accept, which is portrayed as being savage, uncivilized, and even as heathens. These are the images that black Hebrew Israelites seem to have internalized. It is time they sit down and they really revisit their ideas, because they are continuing with the Hamitic case, which is not a case at all. Doctrinal ignorance. They deliberately ignore the fact that their traditional religious and spiritual practices show very obvious African affinities and influences. Throughout the Caribbean and South America, religious practices such as Obeah, Voodoo, and Orisha worship are all rooted in Bantu philosophy. If they were Hebrew Israelites, how come traditionally they inherited purely African religious influences? There you can see possible interest to anyone researching or practicing Santeria, Haitian Vaudou, Cuban Voodoo, Louisiana Voodoo, Ohodo, Candombo, Umbanda, Oroquembanda, Obeah, Yoruban spirituality, African, Afro-American religious traditions, or modern African diasporic religion. It is clear that they have a lot of work to do to cleanse their minds. On the other hand, again, the Torah is full of Bantu or Banu teachings. These are the facts they ignore and they don't want to look at them. Why? Because the Bible itself says Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and the deeds. Acts 7 verse 22. So if Moses, like what one YouTuber has said, was learned in all of the wisdom of the Egyptians, what did he learn? Rather, what did he copy? What did he put in the Torah? That's why some had to write another version of their own history called based on the Talmud, because they knew and they realized that if you read the Torah, you never want to read it anymore. You go to the source of the Torah. These are the facts that black Hebrew Israelites ignore. Quite clearly, there is the Ark of the Covenant found in the tomb of Tutankhamun, which was dug by the European Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon in 1922. They found the Ark already there. There are many arks. Moses was learned in ancient Egypt. This is what he reproduced. There is the ark carried by ancient Bantus, so-called Egyptians or Ethiopians by the Greeks. There is Anubisa. Bother yourself by doing more. Which one is the Hebrew Israelite Ark of the Covenant here? You cannot pick it. Maybe you can pick this one. But you see, it was copied from there. It's there. It exists. You do not have to dig. You do not have to scrounge around. You do not have to have faith. You need your eyes just to see, and you can see that the so-called covering cherubs, angels, are the divinities or goddesses. No question marks at all. So the stories about the ark, about David dancing around the ark, about the disappearance of the ark are all many myths. The ark is there. The Holy of Holies is exactly there, found in the temple of Eduf in Hamit sanctuary with the shrine and the badge. There, Ark of Tutu and Koma. Straightforward. You do not need to go to any place. The Torah, its laws are a rehash of the laws of Ma'at. Straightforward. You have to read them. You have to see them. You have to see Africans practicing these without even reading the book of Coming Forth by Day or Parutema Hore. Their practice, our practice, how I grew up, where I grew up in the village. It's exactly like that. That's the confusion that they then realize and say these are Hebrews. It's not Hebrews. It's our Bantu tradition, old and ancient. Almost 2 million years ago, these practices that I'm talking about in the found in the laws of Mahat. And they are not 613 commandments. They are more than that. They are more than that. Again, there you can see that they try to put these as 12 tribes, but these are totems all over the earth. In Australia, amongst the Aboriginal people, totems. In the Melanesian, Polynesian Islanders, Tongans, Solomon Islanders, everywhere, totems. Asia, Japan, everywhere, totems. South Korea, North Korea, totems. Everywhere. That's our identity as Bantus. Why? Because totems come from our animistic teachings and understanding of nature, so-called netters. Summary then. Since there is no historical evidence that any Hebrew character in the Bible ever existed, nor any grave sites for any of the people of the Bible has ever been found, there are thousands and thousands of grave sites for many of ancient Bantu, Egyptian, and Ethiopic kings and leaders dating back to over 5,000 years ago, before the Hebrew Israelite phenomena ever took place. This Hebrew Israelite phenomena is a well-calculated indoctrination drive. Divide, rule, and conquer. That is why they hate people who look like them. That's the proof that it's a doctrine. It's not reality. There is no scientific evidence to support their erroneous hate teaching that Hebrew Israelites are a separate, unique, dark-skinned race. Today, we find many Hebrew Israelites rejecting the idea that Africa is their continent and that the whole earth is ours. Whereas their leaders, Sanders Crowdy, Benami, as well as others, proudly refer to themselves as Bantus, as Ethiopians, and the doctrinal differences with our ancient ancestors. So the same with a lot of people. Bantus, or the word Bantu, includes every melanin dominant human. Bantu means human, melanin dominant human. We have another term for those that are not of melanin dominance. There's a term for them. But once you say Bantu, once you say Umuntu, you are talking of a melanin dominant human. This is your Bantu identity, your melanin, which is your power. We only become Hebrew Israelites, Christians, Muslims, Jews, Buddhists, Shintoists through conversion. But you cannot change your melanin dominant nature unless if you drink chemicals and fight it. But your mind is the one that is the software that is changed and taken over. The children of Israel, so-called Hebrew Israelite, a Jewish chronology, shows that they are a journey come late. From 60,000 years ago to about 6,000 years ago, there were no Hebrews. There were no Jews. There were no Israelites. There were Bantus. Even way before the 60,000 years given by science and evolutionists. In our records, the Dogons, their life cycles of thousands and thousands of trillions of years. Now, find your true identity and learn to sniff doctrines that eventually train you to practice cultures like Black Hebrew Israelism and others that become a means for you to be stolen and taken away from your African identity. And they hate others that look like them. Therefore, they are committing race genocide. It cannot be a correct and a true doctrine. Maarifa Dohem, applied to Ubuntu Mahati consciousness, above all else perceives that our divine and ancestral memories, rich history, and totemic activation awakens our incredible melanin dominant identity. To learn more, send us an email on join@marifado.com. Also visit our website www.marifado.com. Subscribe to our channel Hamitic Hebrew Ethics. This preacher Rabbi LM Timizulu saying, Bantus all over the earth till we meet again. Edupe siabonga tatenta henkos.